Welcome to Arise Life, a community of believers being equipped, empowered, and released into their destiny. For more information, go to ariselife.org or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
The word was this, that a turtle, although it's protected, has to extend its neck, step out beyond its comfort zone every time it wants to move. It moves slowly, but it moves consistently. And we know who won the race, right? Come on. And so one of the things is, it's so great. Remember, because we're making small steps of obedience. Something I want you to know is, who here was raised, sorry, I'm going to need the board. Is that okay? Sorry. But who here, you were raised with tons and tons of Bible. You got trained in a lot of Bible. Isn't that good? Except when it's not. Who here has become really, really smart in the Bible and then you realize you didn't understand any of it? Or better yet, you weren't applying any of it. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. One of the things God said to me recently, he said, I would much rather you read one verse and obey it than read 10 chapters and understand it. Did you hear me? I'd rather you read one verse and obey it than read 10 chapters and understand it. Because obedience, Jesus said, making disciples of all nations, right? Teaching them to do what? Obey all that I've commanded. Not understand, not become good students, but obey. It is obedience that transforms us. So, I've been thinking about something here about the seasons. You know, we've talked about this word that we've had about that the beginning of the year was, the first 3 months was a season of fire. And it was God was purifying us. He was cleansing us. He was strengthening us. But do you know some cultures, do you know what they do to prepare for planting? They burn the fields, so that all the nutrients can be buried in the soil. Many times a season begins with fire because God has to burn up even the good things. Remember, if you bear fruit, he will prune you that you may bear even more fruit. And who here fights that pruning? Who's like, why do you hate me? Nobody? But in fact, it's so that none of the nutrients are lost. All are buried into the ground to prepare for another harvest. And then the rain, when the seed comes, then the rains begin to fall. The rains begin to cause growth. But where does growth first happen? Under the ground. Under the ground. Right? Under the ground. What is the problem with growth that's under the ground? Who here gets frustrated when it's under the ground? Under the ground. Now, if I can't see the growth under the ground, what might I do? Get discouraged? Anybody here want to dig it up and see if it's really growing? What happens if I dig it up to see if it's really growing? The word always comes in seed form. Many times a healing comes in seed form. Is it really real? Is it really real? Hold your horses for 4 seconds. Let the thing grow. Let him have his work in you. I don't know. Is it real? I don't know. Who are my people? You just got to poke everything. You got to test everything 43 times. And God's like, chill for a second. Yeah. Let me work. Don't nudge people. There's some people going, it's a word for you. Let the word grow in them, okay? No, but then as it grows, guess what happens sometimes is the growth itself gets tested in the flood. Who here, you've experienced this? You just start growing. You're growing. You're starting to see some growth in an area. And in comes a testing. Nobody? Every single time. You're not alone. If you don't see the testing, you just didn't notice. It's there. It's there. It's there to strengthen it. We talked about this, that when they grew trees in an artificial environment, they fell over when they bear fruit. Because they need the testing of the winds and the weather to be able to be strong enough to bear fruit. And in fact, the testing is what prepares you to bear fruit, which leads us to our season of harvest. Who's glad we're in a season of harvest? Well, guess what's going to happen in a season of harvest? You got to pick it. You got to work. Grind up the wheat. You got to what? Clean it up. You got to preserve it. You reap what you sow. Who here's a little worried there might be something other than grain in your field? Anybody here been sowing some other things this year? Well, I have a supernatural gift of complaining. I'm sorry, negative prophecy. I'm scared. Now, the good news is, before harvest, okay, so we talked about this with the 4 soils, right? What are 4 things that can come up in your ground? One is rocks. What are the rocks? What are coming up out of the ground are rocks. They are offense. And in fact, when you begin to believe for God, for his promises, the offenses you and I have been holding on get revealed. Because you can't go where he's taking you and hold on to your offenses. That's right. The second thing that's going to come up is thorns. Thorns. The cares of this life. The cares of this life will come up out of this ground. And again, that's one of the testing. Again, when the cares of life come, who here waters them with complaining? No poking. What should you do rather than water your weeds? Pull them up. It's not complicated. Pull them up. Pull them up. This feels true. God, what do you want me to know about this? This feels really true, but it's not, doesn't line up with the word you've spoken into my life. You said this is the harvest I'm going to bring, but this care right here says I'm going broke. This care right here says I'm all alone. This care right here says everybody hates me. This care right here says whatever. God, what do you want me to know about this? The other one, I missed the first one. The first one is he's going to break up the hardened ground, isn't he? Yes. The hard ground. Why? Because it can't receive rain and it can't receive seed. And he's going to break up every hard ground spot in our mind. But here's the problem. Anybody know something? When you're going through your garden weeding, what are you doing? You're packing it down. You're packing it down. Keeping it. And so we have to be regularly letting him break up our ground of all our religion. Right? Break up our ground of all our traditions. And I will tell you this. Are you going to have a harvest in your life without intentionality? Not the harvest you'll want? Okay, here's the question. I sow fescue, beautiful fescue, seed, grass seed, over my yard. I sow wonderful grass seed. I don't break up the ground. I don't weed it. I just let fescue grow. What will be my harvest come August? Lots of weeds? How much fescue will remain? Not much or none, right? Without intentionality, the only harvest we will have is offense and cares and hard places in our life. And the birds will enjoy the seed. I'm going to mess for half a second. Then I'll get back on track. Who here, you've received a word, but it bore no fruit in your life, so you ran around to get another word? Could it be the problem's not the word? Leave that one right there for you. Who here, you got into a habit of running from word to word and it'd be like, yay, yay. Pretty soon you quit wanting words and you start blaming everybody for giving you words. But if we will persevere, if we will not grow weary of doing good in due season, we will reap a harvest. Reap a harvest. Reap a harvest. Whew. You know, the interesting thing is, if you will invest the little harvest you have, do you know how quickly it will produce a millionfold? Okay, do you want to know something? Do you know rabbits? You know rabbits? You got 2 rabbits. If you let them breed nonstop, anybody want to guess how many rabbits you will have in 3 years? 450,000? Who else? 2 million? 330 million. 42-day gestation. Maturity at 4 months. Do the math. That's why it's called being like rabbits. Do not despise the days of small beginnings. Maybe at the end of your harvest, you've got 2 grains of wheat. Wow. Hold on to them. What do you do with them? Do you grind them up for grain to eat? No. You bury them in the ground again. So I want us to watch real quickly. We're going to be going through a story we've gone through before, but hopefully we'll see it from some other directions. Because I kept thinking about this very thing in the life of Elijah. If you guys got Bibles, quickly open them to 1 Kings chapter 17. And we'll start a few verses before. I'm not saying that you receive brownie points if you have a Bible, but maybe you do. All right. It starts back before this. So you guys got to understand, is you guys remember King David, he brought the country together. It expanded. It became the wealthiest nation on earth at that time. In one generation, they went from being slaves in their own land to the Philistines to being the most dominant power in the area and making money hand over fist. And then Solomon. And Solomon forgot everything. Solomon was the wisest man who ever lived and was dumber than a box of rocks. See, that's what I mean by understanding without obedience is nothing. He understood everything and obeyed nothing. He was wise and dumb. You can be both. And so what happened is it all disappeared after Solomon's life. And the country ripped into a northern kingdom of Israel and a southern kingdom in Judah. The southern kingdom in Judah was about, they were faithful to God about 65% of, about 35% of the time. The nation of Israel in the north was unfaithful to God about 100% of the time. And this time we are about 100 years from the time of Solomon. So it would be like from the time of David, 100 years. So it would be like us talking about Theodore Roosevelt. He's a nice guy, doesn't really affect my life. And then Solomon was like John F. Kennedy. But again, interesting history, but we're living today. And here they are. They can't even remember who they are, where they're supposed to be. And in this place, we have in the 38th year of King Asa, king of Judah, this is verse 29 of 16, Ahab, son of Omri, became king of Israel and reigned in Samaria over Israel 22 years. Ahab, son of Omri, did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those before him. Who's getting curious? Right? He's a go-getter, right? He's a go-getter. You want to know, if they were evil, but he's eviler than more, who has, curiosity kills the cat kind of a moment, right? You're like, I want to know. I want to know. Well, thankfully, the Bible explains. Now, by the way, you're going to have to connect some dots so I keep this family oriented, okay? He not only considered it trivial to commit the sins of Jeroboam, which was sacrificing to idols and doing all kinds of things, but also married Jezebel, daughter of Ethbaal, the king of the Sidonians. And the king was the high priest of Baal, of Sidon. and began to serve Baal and worship him. He set up an altar for Baal in the temple of Baal that he built in Samaria, and the worship of Baal involved sex trafficking. It required it. He then set up an altar that he built in Samaria, and Ahab also built an Asherah pole. I'll just say this: where do we have a pole in our society? It's the same kind of pole for the same function. Okay? He went from worshiping God to that. And did more to arouse the anger of God. Did he arouse the anger of God because God is, oh my gosh, I can't believe you don't like me anymore? Why is God mad? He's worshiping a false God. But see, because he's hurting people. See, when you worship, everybody thinks my worship of a false God, my worship of my pleasure, my worship of my desires, my worship of my own has no consequences, that it is a sin without consequence, a victimless crime. Wow. It's not. It will lead to brokenness and destruction. God is not mocked, but the law of sowing and reaping is not mocked. He's not, because he's like, I can't believe you're not worse. He's not petty. God was doing fine in eternity without us. He wanted us for us to know his goodness. And when we kill and hurt and maim his children, he gets mad. Not just for them, but because it destroys us. In Ahab's time, Hiel of Bethel rebuilt Jericho. He laid its foundations at the cost of his firstborn child. He did a witchcraft ritual to kill his child. Do you see a problem? And it said to fulfill the prophecy of Joshua. You need to know something about this. In the ancient times, if I tell you, if there is if water is boiling, and I say the water, or I say the oven, the stove is hot, it's on fire, and I say don't touch the stove, and you touch the stove, what's going to happen to you? So here's the deal. In the Bible, when it says God said this will happen, he's not saying it because he made it happen. He said if you go that way, this will happen. That's not God doing it to you. Do you understand that? Who here has gotten some bad consequences for some stupid things you've done? God didn't do it to you. In fact, the fact that you didn't get all the consequences you paid for is God loving you. Okay? But people are like, God's so petty. God is not petty. He is so patient. He is slow to anger, desiring that none should perish. And he said, and so now in the middle of this, Elijah the Tishbite from Tishbe. Doesn't it make sense that he's a Tishbite from Tishbe? Okay, here's why that's important. What they're trying to say. He's a little old boy who ain't never left home. He's from Gilead. He's from the other side. This is redneck. He's a redneck who never left town. I'm from Kentucky. So listen. And you know the type. If you grew up in the country, you know the type. They're just like, I ain't mean no harm. Just all by myself. God will use anybody who's listening. He said to Ahab, how does redneck get to the capital city and talk to Ahab the king? As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except by my word. Okay. Anybody feel like that's kind of random? It's okay. You can blink twice. If the Bible looks random, it's never random. There's something we don't see. You need to put that in your mind. So this speaks back. Do you guys remember what the curse was to Adam? Reaping thorns and thistles. That when you decide to go it on your own without God, you disconnect. If I unplug a lamp, what happens to the lamp? It goes dark. If you unplug yourself from God, don't expect to get the same results. Because he designed this life to only work with him. And so what he's saying, so in Deuteronomy 28, he says, guys, the blessings of being with me are woohoo. The curses are woohoo. By the way, the curses are just like woohoo. The blessings are woohoo, right? Did you understand what I'm saying? Like -5 plus 20, right? Okay, so, but the curses are bad. What is he trying to say? He says, if you try to do this on your own, you can't. Anybody found that to be true? Yeah. Okay, so what's happened? He said, one of the signs will be the sky will close and there will be no rain. Do you know what they worship Baal for? Rain. He was the rain god. And God's like, You're not going to do horrible things to people and in worshiping that thing and expect, no, you're disconnecting. And so what happens is, he literally, my sense is, if you read scripture and you don't hear the voice of God, you're just going to be listening to your own mind. You need to be reading, God, show me your glory. Show me your face. What do you want me to know? And what happened is, I think what happened is Elijah was reading the scripture or remembering the scripture one day and went, oh, it's still raining. See, God, if I go to a light switch and I turn off the lamp and it doesn't turn on, what will I do? I will try to change the bulb. Let's say I'm going to check the bulb. Bulb still works. I'm going to follow the plug back to see where it got unplugged. God's grace is judgment. See, judgment lets me know something I'm doing has negative consequences without it killing me. Does that make sense? Judgment is simply allowing me to know what I'm actually doing. Who here got addicted to speeding until you got a ticket? You know what I'm talking about? You're like, it just gets faster and faster and faster. I didn't know we did triple digits, right? And then you get one really good ticket and you're suddenly like, I think I'll drive the normal speed limit, right? You are always dangerous driving, but a little bit of judgment causes you not to end up dead. So here is Elijah has heard this word, and so he comes to tell Ahab, listen, it's not going to happen. He said, listen, there's not going to be rain or dew in the next few years except at my word. I love this. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Okay, I have a question. If you walk up to the most powerful man in the land and you tell him, ain't going to happen unless I say something, what do you think the most powerful man in the world in your land is going to do? Laugh? Kill him? I'd put him in a box and wait. And if it didn't rain, I'd be like, come here, my friend. Let's hear about that word. Right? I imagine Elijah was obedient to the word and went, oh. Anybody, you said yes to Jesus and you stepped out and then all of a sudden realized you didn't have a plan B? Let me tell you, when you follow Jesus, there isn't a plan B, but he has the extension of plan A. Then the word said, leave here, turn eastward to hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. Where is he from? East of the Jordan. God sent him up to, you remember that holler up there? Yeah, yep, around this, yep, right there. That's right there. You remember, ain't nobody going to find you there. Right? Sometimes God will breathe on your memory, breathe upon your intellect, but he'll guide you. And he goes, and I have directed, this is where you know it's God, I have directed ravens to supply you with food there. I have a feeling, just knowing what it's like to hear God's voice, that he went out going, well, it's smart to hide, so I'm going to go with that. So I don't know if it's God or if it's not, but it's smart to hide. So I'm going to go, that makes sense. I'm going to hide. And when that first raven showed up with food, I'll be honest, you know what I would have thought? I think the raven is the food. Right? You know, I'd be like, right? No, but the crazy thing is, have you guys seen this online? There are people that have trained ravens to exchange money for food, and they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars in a year. Like in New York City, there's a guy, and he gives them a little bit of seed or a little bit of bread if they were to come back with a coin or paper money. And he just sits back all day just raking it in. Isn't that hilarious? What's cracking me up is, can you imagine these ravens are coming in, just swooping in, taking off with meat? I mean, what's going through the town? There's a bunch of weird ravens taking off with our food. But here's the interesting thing is, so he did what the Lord told him, went to there, and the ravens brought in bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening. Okay, in the ancient world, if you ate meat at a feast, it was good. If you ate meat once a week, you were doing well. And only the king ate meat once a day. Elijah's eating better than the king. He's just living large. Why? I would submit in a strange way that the word was fire and he is now being watered in the wilderness, in the hidden place where nothing's seen. Have you had God working on something in your life and you tried to share it with other people and they didn't understand and they couldn't grasp it and it didn't make sense? You're in that hidden place. Let him keep working. Let him keep working. You're in the hidden place. And he's all by himself. But let me tell you, there will come a time when all by myself is not good enough anymore. And God needs to bring it out. Bring it above the ground. Bring it out. And so what happens is, it says, sometime later, the brook dried up. How are you going to know that it's no longer good to be hidden? No longer good to be by yourself? The brook dries up. It ain't working no more. You know what I'm talking about? You're like in a season where it's like, me and Jesus, it's so wonderful. And then you're like, that's the brook drying up. Or it could be in some way, shape, or form, I can't do it on my own. And so you heard what Grace said. She first prayed on her own. But then she pulled somebody else in. You can't do it on your own and expect a harvest. Sometime later, the brook dried up because they had no rain in the land. Why don't they have rain in the land? Okay. Who are my people? What is your conversation with God? What are you saying to God at this point? It's okay. My brook dried up. What do I do? What do you want me to know? You guys are so nice. I'm getting mad at God for the very word I gave. Because now it's come to... Boy, you guys are so nice. I'm going to be real. In this moment, I'm questioning, was it God? Because it's not turning out the way I expected. This is so important. Who here, you're great following God as long as everything goes according to your expectation? 2 of us? Awesome. What happens when things don't go according to my expectation? I get mad at God? Take my toys and go home? Start changing my mind? Every man for himself? I'm never going to see a harvest unless I get past this point. See, flood is contradictory to what I think is needed for a harvest. I'm mad. A drought is opposite of what I want for harvest. I'm mad. If I can't allow God to offend my understanding and give me a new understanding, I will be stuck where I started and actually worse off. Imagine Elijah just wanders out of the wilderness like, I'm done. What was all that for? Some of us have seasons of our life, and that's the word about it. And I'm going to challenge you. It could be that was not God's perfect will. But you and I got afraid and pulled out of a process because it offended our understanding. And God wants to challenge your understanding of your own history and give you a new story. Could it be that we bailed on God, not the other way around? Who here has helped God out? You guys remember Moses is up on the mountain with God for 40 days? He's the one fasting, by the way. He comes down, and the people are worshiping a golden idol. They couldn't wait. This isn't how we expected it. All right. Sometime later, the brook dried up because of the no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him. When did the word of the Lord come to him? When it was already dry. Anybody watched a stream dry up? It takes a while. Anybody watched your bank account dry up? Sometimes it takes a while, but you can tell where it's going. Nobody? What do you do when your bank account is drying up? What do you start doing? Pray. You pray. I like it. Look for another source. What? Banking money? Making money? Come on. Pray for breakthrough. But who here has questioned God's leading that brought you to the place where the finance is decreasing? 3 of us. You can pray for us later. God, what do you want me to know? Not, I'm going to figure it out on my own. Every stupid thing I've done started with me trying to figure it out on my own. Remember what happened with Eve? She figured it out on her own. Worked out real good. No, God, what do you want me to know? And then the word of the Lord. He's sitting there by the brook. He's still by the brook, though. He didn't leave it. And he said, then the word of the Lord, go at once to Zarephath in the sea region of Sidon and stay there. Okay, I've got a question. Anybody remember where the region of Sidon is? Can we pull that map up on the next? Zarephath is way up in the place of Phoenicia. Anybody remember somebody from Sidon that we read about in chapter 16? Jezebel. I was hiding out where nobody was going to find me, and the word of the Lord is, go to Sidon? Are you nuts? I've got a question for you. Why would Elijah listen to the word of the Lord? And don't say because it's the word of the Lord. Listen, because I'll tell you what, I hear the word of the Lord sometimes and I'll still question it.
Yeah, out of obedience.
Out of obedience. Come on. Why would he be obedient? Why would he choose to be obedient to the word of the Lord? He was desperate. He had no options. What's that? Rewards. Okay, one sec. I got to write these down. These are good. Okay, so I heard rewards, desperation, no turning back. What was that? Repeat that. There. Repeat. What was that? Out of obedience. There was one other. No turning back. Yeah. No turning back. No options. Rewards, desperation.
I said the same thing as Emily, basically.
He knows what it sounds like. Yeah, let's go with a repeat. Okay, there was one other. You guys were genius. I missed it. I was so excited about it, and then I forgot it. But anyway, so here's the deal. God has purposely put him in a place with limited options. Yeah. Could your desperation be the plan of God? Because he knows our weakness? That if we had options, we would take them? Because can he wander out of the wilderness? My bad, Ahab. No big whoop. We're back on. No. He has nowhere to go. Who here has gotten angry at God that you're in a place of desperation without options? The rest of you are liars. But anyway. Lightning. No. Why have you done this? Why have you led me out into the wilderness to die? Right? What did he do with the people of Israel? He brought them out of Egypt and he gave them no options. They're up against a Red Sea. Then the sea opens. Now we go, oh, look at there, the sidewalk. Dude, if an ocean comes apart, it can come back together again. I don't know how this works, but I have limited options because there's an army on one side. Okay, we're doing this. Desperation will allow God to take you places you would never go otherwise. To get a harvest you would never get otherwise. Desperation. I can't turn back. I can't go back. I've run out of options. I can't stay at the brook anymore, can I? But I love this, what you said. Because he has a history with God where God showed himself faithful once. Now notice, this is where I get messed up. Not you, but me. I'm like, okay, Lord, where is the other brook with the other ravens? I'm waiting. Show me the brook, Lord. Show me the brook. God says, I don't repeat. What? I believed him once, but then after that, I just want to copy and paste. God does not. Well, I love it. He parts the Red Sea as he holds out a staff. The next time, he parts the River Jordan when they step on the water. Like, he doesn't repeat anything. He changed it. And then he parts it at Elijah's life when he strikes it with his sash. God doesn't repeat himself. If we are repeating ourselves, it's magic. Because it requires desperation to listen and follow the voice. It requires risk. And so here it is. But he has shown himself faithful. He knows what the voice sounds like, but he's going to say something different. And he also has built the muscle of obedience. This is why small acts of obedience are so important. Because they build to big ones. Little step by little step. The word, as he was obedient at the stream, then the word came. So he goes to the one place you wouldn't want to go. He goes to Jezebel's hometown, the place where they worship Baal the most, where the worst things are happening. And God goes, I've got a widow woman there. Now, when I was telling you what Baal worship does, who are the people that most suffer from it? Women and children. Who does God send him to? A widow and her child. Don't you let them tell you he's not compassionate. His judgment is because he's compassionate. Because he loves. He takes his guy and he goes, I'm going to die. I got a mission for you. I'm going to die. I've got a mission for you. Could it be when you and I are trying to save our life, God has a mission for you? There's somebody who needs what you've got. Could it be the harvest you're going to bring isn't your own?
It's for God's glory.
It's for God's glory. It's for the sake of this woman. God doesn't do miracles to do tricks. He does it to show his love. So he went to Zarephath. You got to stop for a second. What did he do? What does it say he did? He left his comfort zone. He went to Zarephath. He said, I have directed a widow to supply you with food. Do you know in their world, the weakest, most impoverished person in a society was a widow? They'd be like, hey, you're struggling for money? There's this guy down under the bridge at 75. He'll help you out. Does that? Yeah, after the ravens, he's open to it. But let me just tell you, if you're looking for reason in God's wisdom, you will be missing it. Like God's like, wait, I'm looking for a widow. That does not make any sense. There's a lot of people wandering through the church with worldly wisdom, acting like they're the voice of God. Just because it appeals to your reason doesn't mean it's God. So he went to Zarephath. I'm sorry, I'd need a little more than that. Anybody want Google Maps at least? Like, give me her address. There's a widow woman. Yep, probably is. Probably a bunch of them. Yep. It said Abraham went out not knowing where he was going.
Yes.
It said, God said, I will take you to the land I will show you.
Yes.
Who here, you'll only step out when you've got the whole plan?
Come on.
It's going to be a while. It's going to be a while. Sorry. 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 Now, I'm going to tell you, there were people, that widow woman got blessed by Elijah. And she didn't, but God will still find ways to bless you, but you'll miss out on the fullness of what he has. If you'll only go when you have the whole plan. So he went to Zarephath. And again, why did he do it? There was good rewards, but he was desperate, but he had a history with God. God's not going to call you to jump off a cliff or jump off a boat unless the boat's sinking. Remember Peter? Peter's like, if it's you, God. Well, the boat was already sinking. We think his faith was great, but it was really like getting off a sinking ship. But anyway, moving on. So he went to Zarephath, where when he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. Why was she gathering sticks? Because she was super poor. You would get your sticks or whatever delivered, DoorDash or whatever at that time. She's gathering up little stubble, trying to make a fire. And he called to her and asked her, would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink? Anybody see her? Does this remind you of somebody?
Yes.
What is it? Huh? The well? The woman at the well. It was just as bizarre for him, a Jew, to ask her, a Phoenician. For him, a man, her, a widow. He goes in low with humility and said, would you give me a glass of water? I was talking with someone on the phone yesterday, and they were going through something really difficult. It was really emotional, and I'm in Kroger at the time. And I'm going through the checkout, and you're trying to, the thing. When you're having a deep conversation with someone, but you're in Kroger, right? And you're trying to not act like you're in Kroger. Am I the only one? Okay, good. Okay, anyway, and so I'm doing this self-checkout, beep, beep. I mean, it's subtle. Anyway, and then my friend Patricia walks up, and she goes, "Hey, Peter." I said, "Hey, Patricia." Well, I saw her from afar, and I said, "Lord, what do you want me to know? Because I don't want to interrupt this person. They're sharing their heart, but at the same time, this is Patricia that you've been preaching through me." And he goes. And I was just asking him. I didn't have an answer, but she goes, "Hey, how you doing?" And immediately, without thinking, I was like, "Hey, Patricia, how you doing?" She's like, "It's a Saturday." I said, "All day." I know. I said, "Well, I'll be praying for you." She said, "All right." Anyway, and I just went back around to it, and I was like, "Oh, I hope they don't feel whatever." About 30 minutes later, they said, "That was amazing." Just like that, you just stepped into the moment to love her. I thought, you're right. You're right. See, most of my life I haven't been that. I've been the, remember the Good Samaritan? I've been the one who's too busy about the Lord's work to stop for the one. Sorry. I mean, that's repentance. And I was like, it's true. I'm stopping for the one. Could it be that the encounters God has for us are, can you give me a glass of water? She had no idea that the cry of her heart was right there. Could it be the breakthrough you're looking for is in your response to that gentle, tiny tug of a heart of compassion for another? I can't worry about other people. I'm dying. I'm starving. I'm whatever. And we find out. What do we find out? She goes, okay. She says, and as she was going to get it, he called, "Oh, and bring me, please, a bit of bread." Okay, who got offended right off? You were like, right? As she was going to get it, he called, "As surely as the Lord your God lives." By the way, that it sounds religious. It's really she's cussing at this point. Because she's blaming his God. Why? Because it's famous throughout the world that the reason there's no rain is because of them. See, the people around Israel needed them to walk in the blessing of God. The people around you need you walking in the blessing of God. So as surely as you know, as the Lord your God lives, she said, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son that we may eat it. I love the dash. You know what the dash means? And die! Subtle, subtle, subtle. Elijah said to her, what did he say to her? Don't be afraid. Who here? Why do you think he said don't be afraid? I submit it's because that's what he heard every day at the brook. Are we still okay? Don't be afraid. I'm still where I'm supposed to be? Don't be afraid. Can I get some more information? Don't be afraid. Can you clarify? Don't be afraid. Who are my people? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid is stay on target. Don't be afraid. The things he says to you will come out of you to those around you, and it will bless them. Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me. She said, I only have enough for a small loaf. And then make something for you, yourself, and your son. And the jar of oil, for this is what the Lord God of Israel says, the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day of the Lord sends rain on the land. Reward, right? Is she desperate? What does she have to lose? Everything, but she's already going to lose everything. Who are my people? You will do that. You're like, it's my last little thing. You can't have it. And God's like, I will literally give you food for the rest of your life. No! He's like, so if you die, okay, in one scenario, you die 30 minutes earlier. In another, you have enough forever. So, again, little risk, lot reward. I would submit she heard the voice of God through Elijah. She wasn't depending on Elijah. She heard the voice of God. You can't depend on others for the word of the Lord, because even if they bring you the word of the Lord, your heart has to hear it, his voice. Does that make sense? You can't blindly trust the word of the Lord in somebody else. If they're speaking, you've got to listen for God's voice. Does that make sense? And then she's obedient. And she went away and did as Elijah had told her. And so there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and for her family. When we separate and try to meet our own needs, we don't have enough. But when we choose to take the little we have and to be obedient, to be money in his pocket to spend however he chooses, whether it's our time, our money, our energy, our relationships, our house, our stuff, then guess what? There's more than enough. And that's the thing is, what leads to a harvest is when we step out into together. And it said, for the jar of flour was not used up. And it in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. We're going to keep going with that story so you can read ahead. But I want to say something. This is so important. Our expectations are going to be continually confronted. And we're going to be continually, if we follow God, we will be brought into desperate situations. Who here, you signed up to follow God so as not to go into desperate situations? I have bad news for you. You should have read the fine print. If I'm going to follow him, he will lead me into desperate situations. Because in desperate situations, I trust him and I trust others. On my own, I will shrink into an ever smaller space all by myself. we could have the worship team come up. As we go into worship, my question is this. I feel like for some of us, that thing about the stories we've told ourselves, it's so scary to surrender that story and believe that God might be speaking another story, another alternative of what happened, where I have it, that I'm the victim and he's the villain. For some of us, it's a matter of that God is confronting, our expectations have been confronted. And in our desperate place, we are pulling back and he's inviting us to step forward. Some of us, he's calling us out of where we've been separated. We can go ahead and stand. As some of us, he's been inviting us out of where we've been all by ourselves at the brook in obedience. Elijah was in obedience at the brook, but now he's calling them out into uncomfortable relationship. I don't know what it is, but I want to say the one who calls you is faithful and true to bring to completion that which he has begun. Let's worship.
For more information, go to ariselife.org or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.